Guys, we are here talking about metal and
rock and roll, baby.
That's it. And what are the differences? And as you can see, I've got my good friend here, Cliff.
Dude, it's so good to be here in your studio. It's nice. It's nice. Thank you so much for having me, man.
You're welcome. You guys know Cliff from my videos at Replay Guitar Exchange in Tampa, which, hey, we're filming there in a couple of days,
That's right, yeah.
But I want to get Cliff on the channel because, dude, you are, to me, you're like one of the experts out there, and you just got this really cool style, this really just raw rock and roll style, you know, with your band, Quasi Mojo. I love and admire what you do, so I wanted to have you on and just kind of talk about some of the differences. We've got some more tones coming up for you, by the way, as well. Also, hang around till the end of the video, because those of you who are more interested in the rock style of playing, and look, you can play it all. You can play metal, rock, you can even play country if you want. And some of you are already shaking your heads. No, Jason, we're not doing that. But hang around till the end of the video. We've got something for you at the end of this that caters really to that rock and roll style. So hang around for that. But we're going to dive right into what I feel like one of the big differences between metal style guitar playing and rock style guitar playing. And that's the type of chords that you play. I mean, we've got power chords, and then in rock and roll, like, what are you mainly doing in rock?
It's true, man, and it's a really loaded question, right? It's kind of subjective. So the chordy stuff in rock and roll, to me, a lot of times, what I see and what we do in our rock band is we'll just do full G chords, full D chords, full any of those first position chords, but just put some distortion on it, run it through a Marshall and crank it up. Instead of doing more power chord stuff, it's all about that full chord and letting those strings ring out. And it just gives it a big, warm fullness to the chord instead of like a tighter, bitier sound like you would get in metal, if that makes any sense.
Well, let's hear that real quick, actually. It makes perfect sense. So here's kind of and guys, again, a lot of this is subjective. You know, the genres crossover. We'll talk more about that. But here's kind of, I guess, a stock metal riff. Cliff is going to play something that has more of that rock and roll style that he was just talking about. So you can hear the difference, and again, guys, this is just one metal riff and one rock and roll riff, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, you can now listen to metal bands and listen to some rock and roll and kind of pick out that style. Now, speaking of style, let's get into really what I think defines metal and rock and roll.
Right.
And that's the things that you remember from the song, which are the riffs.
That little hook, man. The riff is my favorite part. It's the coolest little runs, the coolest little things that's going to grab your attention.
The rock riffs might have a little bit more melody to them.
A little bit, yeah, or more pronounced melody and less aggression, really, than a speedy, furious metal riff, like a thrashing riff or something like that.
Well, hey, let's hear some examples, because that's what we all want to do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So here's kind of a typical, let's throw in like a thrashy, almost death metal style riff here.
And then here is one of my favorite styles of rock and roll riffing. Slayer style.
There,
the AC/DC style.
there is a difference, man. Which, you know what? I love both bands. I love both Slayer and
Me too,
AC/DC.
man. Me too. Two of the greats.
They're both awesome. And the funny thing is, a lot of people that, you know, especially back from my era, and I'm not going to date myself here. You guys know I started playing guitar in '89, but back in those days, a lot of people that liked Slayer also liked AC/DC. It was kind of like people liked hard rock and heavy metal. Let's talk about licks now and hear a couple of licks. So I'm just going to play kind of a typical metal lick here. Let's shred a little bit.
Here's a little bit of a rock and roll style lick.
Yeah, so there's some differences in the style. I mean, some like the fast, ready stuff, and I like that. But, dude, I love what I heard coming from you just now, too, man. That's pretty cool stuff.
A lot of that stuff is just that pentatonic-y, boxy stuff that's just time and time, again, has been proven to be good stuff.
But you make it like you can play like a pentatonic bass lick or whatever, and then play another one, but it still sounds different. And I always hear you play different things all the time. It's got that flavor to it, but it's always different. So you can do a lot with it, you know?
Yeah, a lot of it's in the feel, right? And a lot of it is in just the mood of the song in general.
Now, there's one more lick, and I'm not going to play anything metal here. I want to hear Cliff's playing on this, because rock and roll, I mean, yeah, you bend in metal too, but in rock and roll, you do a lot of bends, and let's just hear that real quick. So those bends are cool. I mean, there's a lot more feeling that you can put. And again, it's not that people in metal don't bend. I bend all the time. But there's just a certain style that comes across in the rock and roll bends, you know?
Right, I know exactly what you're saying. And it's like, sometimes it's in the vibrato of the bend too. If you do something, wiggle the note back and forth, it's going to give a completely different feel than if you were just to bend the note up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, dude. All right, there's one more thing we've got to talk about here, and of course, that is the guitar tone, right, dude? I think when it comes down to it, you know, between metal and rock, yeah, there are different styles of playing, but really, I think the tone that you're using, there's a lot to be said for that.
It's arguably one of the biggest differences between rock and metal. The tone is really, you hear a deep, dark, aggressive tone. Yeah. It's probably going to be metal, right? Versus like a lighter gain. Rock typically has a lighter gain, not as much distortion. Sometimes, but not as much. And then there's bands in between. You
know, we were talking about that earlier before we shot the video. There are a lot of bands that, at least back in the 80s, you could say like Iron Maiden, for example. Some people that were into the heavier of metals would call Iron Maiden hard rock, but then a lot of people consider them heavy metal. Scorpions.
Scorpions is a good one,
That's a good example, yeah.
Scorpions is a good one. Because if you listen, Scorpions actually changed a lot. If you listen to their old stuff, it's super rock, and then in the 80s, it got into some of the more metal, like glam metal style.
The glam metal, yes.
You know, it's really cool. So that's a good example.
Yeah, it's a real good example. And several of the hair bands from back in the day, I mentioned Whitesnake, Dokken. I was listening to Dokken this morning, Mr. Scary. I love, when you listen to Mr. Scary, George Lynch, that song, the instrumental, that could go rock, hard rock, it could go heavy metal, you know, either way. So, yeah, I mean, I think these genres at some point cross over. We're all playing power chords. I know we didn't talk much about some of the picking techniques and palm muting, because, you know, you're going to use downstrokes and alternate picking in rock and metal, right? Just in different ways. You're going to palm mute in both rock and metal, just you're going to use those techniques in different ways.
Right.
But, yeah, I think there are a lot of bands that cross over. Now, in today's era, and you had it back then too, you had your death metal bands way back in the day, but in today's era, you've got so many subgenres of, I guess, rock and metal, so there's just so much out there these days, man.
That's why it gets hard to do a video like this, kind of. There's just so many different factors that play a role in all of this. And tunings is a big one.
We didn't even go into tunings, yeah, because I know a lot of metal they like to down tune or use 7 and 8 string guitars.
Yeah.
And I know some rock bands will down tune, right? But typically 6 string guitar, you might tune down to what, E flat or something like that.
Yeah, we go down a half step, but then in metal you might see guys going all the way, like at the guitar shop we get guys that are like, I want to set my guitar up for drop B, and I'm like, ooh, that's heavy.
That's a lot to drop there. You can write some darker riffs with the lower tunings. Yeah,
I think so, and I think it's easier on the singer too.
That is true.
We can talk about that later.
I want to point you over to the Ultimate Rock Guitar Guide, and that is over on Riff with Cliff's channel. Dude, you put this video out about a week before we're doing this one here, and I think it's called Beginner's Guide to Playing Rock Guitar, five things you must know, something like that. But we will put it up here, guys. Head over to Cliff's channel. Check that video out if you're interested in playing more of those rock styles. I love the rock styles because I like to actually mix some metal and rock in. In other words, I sort of get tired sometimes of playing just the jun jun jun, the power chord after power chord, and even the riffs. I like to have those open chords thrown in sometimes.
It's cool to have those techniques, and there's a lot of different ones. So I just picked out 5, threw a video together. So give it a watch, and if you learn something, well then good. I'm glad I was able to help you.
Yeah, and I'll also put the link for that video at the end and in the description of this video as well. So do go check that out. Hey, subscribe to Cliff's channel. You know, we've been doing videos together for quite some time at Replay, which I'm very appreciative, man. So, because you're the one that got me that gig, man. So
yeah, man, and we're about to do another one.
Yes, we're doing another one in a few days.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah, keep an eye out. Anything else you want to share about rock guitar in general, dude?
You don't need all the craziest amps. You don't need all the craziest guitars. All you need is a little bit of distortion and one guitar and some inspiration. You should go out there and you could be playing rock and roll.
That's it. Or you can play metal, or you can just combine them all together and do both.
Yeah, you should do that, actually. That's the way.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the channel here. And
thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, guys, keep it metal and, hey, keep it rock and roll, too.